floor to public participation. As the chair of the school committee, I would like to state we know things occurred which has people upset. This is a very complex situation. Legally, open session is not the appropriate place for personal attacks of school employees or discussing in the first instance complaints against personnel or related personnel issues. In fact, the open meeting law and exemption specifically provides school committees the ability to go into executive session to discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. And further, that the individual employee is required to be provided 48 hours written notice to such executive session will be taking place, and the employee has a right to be present for such discussion. As such, I will gavel any, not allow such discussion to take place tonight. I encourage everyone who has any complaints against the school officials or employees to forward them in writing to the superintendent or myself so they can be reviewed and handed in an appropriate manner. The school committee takes this situation seriously. What occurred will be handled in the best possible way for everybody. We have a lot to accomplish tonight, so if the comments become too repetitive, I am going to ask that we move on, but I do want to be fair and let people speak as long as we can do that. As a reminder, the comments are limited to 3 minutes. Thank you. I have actually, a person did write to me earlier today, and I had told Matt that I would let him be the first one to speak.
Now appropriate?
Yep.
Thank you. Do you need me to push a button? Thank you.
And again, please introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Matt Magnarelli, and I am a parent of 2 students that went to Burlington High School. Between my wife and I and my 2 children, we have 50 years in the Burlington education system. And I'd like to first thank the committee for letting me speak today. Thank you, Ms. Bond, for recognizing and responding to my email. The first thing I want to say is I really appreciate all the things that the school committee does and the opportunities that you provide the staff, the budgets, the oversight, and the leadership to be able to hire and retain employees like Ms. Diozzi and Ms. Rogers at the high school. They make a huge difference in our students and in our town and in the education system, so I appreciate that. I have 2 policy issues that I wanted to talk about today, and these are policies that are listed on your site. The first of which is called Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Mental Health. And I want to explain to why I think that policy is difficult to understand. I'm going to read the policy verbatim. This is from your website from this morning. Policy. It's not a dramatic pause. That's your policy for us to notice. I would request that your policy for that be listed and the date that it was made to be put there. I understand we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion director. I don't know what policy that he is supposed to follow or how he's supposed to do his job. The second policy I have issue with is called reporting incidents, and this is on your website under district, diversity, equity, inclusion, and mental health. There was a recent issue in the high school where somebody thought that the DEI director was not representing himself properly. And they wanted to report it, and they were afraid to because of a backlash that may happen. So some of the parents asked me. So I went onto the website, and I'm going to read your policy on reporting incidents. Verbatim, I quote, reporting incidents. There's no link, there's no contact information. This is from your site this morning. I would ask that the committee look at this and what's available to the public. I'd like to know what the policy is for equity, inclusion, diversity, and mental health. And I'd like to be able to know that so I know if our leadership, our teachers, our staff, our administration, those sitting here, if they're abiding by it. And with that said, I'd also like there to be an opportunity for people to report any issues that they have and there to be some oversight to that. And the last thing I want to say in summary is the fact that parents were afraid to report to the DEI director something that they felt was inequitable, certainly not inclusive. is embarrassing. Thank you, my 3 minutes is up. Appreciate it.
Matt, thank you very much for your insight and for pointing that out to us, that
You're welcome.
links, et cetera. So again, thank you. I'm gonna take someone from the virtual audience next. I'm gonna try and alternate back and forth.
I'm going to alternate back and forth between in-person and virtual, to be fair. There's no hands up? Okay, then Adam.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Sinessi, and I speak tonight as a Precinct 1 town meeting member, a taxpayer, and most important, a parent more than anything else. It saddens me that I feel that I need to come before you tonight to discuss a matter that so many in this community seem to have an opinion about. Any conversation related to what we witnessed as a community last week needs to include an acknowledgement that we have children across this district who are various races and religions. Among our students are those who are scared to go to their classroom for fear of being made to suffer physical, emotional, or even sexual trauma. We talk a lot about the social and emotional learning that happens in our schools with a commitment to fostering a love for lifelong learning in our students. But how are we fostering that as a district if student and parent concerns of safety are not adequately addressed? I have a request to the school committee. I ask that you apprise yourself of protocols and procedures that may or may not address student safety. My hope is that this school committee will assist this district in standardizing protocols and procedures for addressing student and parent safety concerns. Children of young ages and verbal abilities don't have the developmental maturity to describe some of the behaviors they've experienced or witnessed in their classrooms. It's too much for us to expect of them to have the awareness and coping mechanisms to process their experiences without giving them support in reporting incidents to their parents. Because young students cannot advocate for themselves, parents are required to intervene on behalf of the children, which means they need their concerns responded to and acknowledged. The communication breakdown between the administration, staff, and parents is a crisis. How parents are communicated to, the information they receive and acknowledged. Let me try that again. How parents are communicated to, the information they receive, and acknowledgements of a remedial action plan are crucial. I mentioned communication and would like to see a discussion on electronic and social media policy added to the next meeting agenda too. I encourage the school committee to review the existing social media and electronic communication policy. Please ask yourselves, what types of mission-critical objectives require the use of Burlington Public Schools property for external communication and which do not? Ask yourself, what standard we want our school employees to exude on the local social media boards pertinent to their professional roles in the buildings under your stewardship. Is it appropriate for some to be acting as unofficial spokespeople for the districts on matters of policy? It's important to remember that senior administration officials and their attitudes towards the community, its employees, and managers. I stopped to make eye contact with someone for a second, excuse me.
And you're coming close to your 3 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I'm wrapping up. So it's important that how they address their managers reflect on their ability to be effective in the roles they're well paid to serve in. We need to be mindful of whether liability could come of their actions as it relates to administering authority on subordinates and teachers, or how their roles may create dissonance to the messaging exuded by their managers. Racism alone cannot be justification for not both acknowledging and responding to parental concerns about student safety. Burlington is in a worse place this week than we were at this point a week ago. That doesn't mean we can't work together as parents, teachers, school committee members, and administrators for progress in the immediate future and beyond. I have a copy of this too to share with all of you, so I'm gonna.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone online yet? That hands up? Nope. Okay.
Nobody online.
And you also could please introduce yourself to everyone.
My name is Jim Hannafin. I'm a lifelong Burlington resident. I went through the Burlington school system. My wife went through the school system. My 9 children went through the school system, and no doubt some of my grandchildren will go through the school system. I just have 5 questions I'd like to put to the board. Are you aware of Dr. Conti's latest apology letter to the Memorial School community?
But we're aware that he,
We're aware that a letter went out, yes.
Are you aware of the incident, the catalyst for that letter?
Yes.
Nowhere in that letter does Dr. Conti indicate that he intends to investigate the incident. There was at least one administrator consulted before the incident, and that administrator showed a total lack of supervisory judgment, wherein not only did he not stop it, he joined in. The only way to know if other administrators were involved in this conduct is to investigate it. Does the board intend to investigate the incident?
The superintendent will do that, and we'll discuss any matter that, again, as I mentioned, appropriate to discuss. Personnel would be done in executive session.
I saw that the board appointed the interim director of special education to the permanent position last week. We all know how interims work. If you get somebody good, you do what you can do to keep them. I'd like to know if the board considered the interim principal at Memorial for the permanent position, and if not, why not?
We're not at liberty to discuss that.
Okay, are you aware of the petition circulating with, at last count, at least 400 signatures calling for Mr. Larkin's resignation or termination from his position as assistant superintendent?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we can't really bring up names, but yes, we're aware of a petition.
Okay, I just wanted that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanford. Please introduce yourself as well.
Of course, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Benjamin Agati. I'm a proud father of a student who recently graduated from Marshall Simons Middle School. The reason I'm bringing to you today, obviously, from the sounds, there are many other things that this board has to discuss, but I'm actually talking about something completely different from that. One of several great staff members at that school, one of them who recently retired, is Sue Rogers, who is now leaving the Bean program, meeting her retirement. It's a fantastic program, a fantastic number of staff members there, and I couldn't help but notice that from looking at different trade publications that are out there, that it seems as though her position had not been posted yet. And I was just wondering when that posting was going to be going out or announced.
Are you able to answer the question, Dr. Conti?
I am. I think we're looking at modifying that position, Mr. Agati, a little bit, and bringing that type of enrichment to more students is really what we're looking to do.
So just to clarify, so then the student will be expanding the number of students, I'm sorry, the program will be expanding the number of students who are receiving that additional enrichment?
Well, again, I think if the enrichment is serving those students well, what we want to see is then all students are the beneficiaries of that type of enrichment. So the position is going to be more of an instructional coach working with teachers to enrich their curricula.
Just so I clarify, so
Yes.
that would be a position that would be helping all teachers to be
Yes.
able to change their curriculum to incorporate some of that material. But that core group of students, which is a group that ordinarily during what used to be a WIN block or an SSR block, did not have a need for additional services, they had a need for additional engagement. That group of students won't be getting separate engagement. That engagement will now be dispersed amongst all the students.
We hope, the plan is that they'll get the engagement that they need within the classes that they have. We'll be able to differentiate for them.
In that case, as you're going about that process, I would ask that you carefully take notice of the last time when Bean was basically on the chopping block and the type of response that it got, and that it is harmful because it is such a small amount of capital for incredible bang for the buck of what this school committee has put into that program that creates great students, engaged students, and the type of civic-minded students that you want. I just caution that if that group and that population, which is a population of students that doesn't need behavioral modification or watching, which doesn't need additional support so them to be able to meet the threshold, but what they need is engagement and enrichment. That core group of students, that enrichment will be lost, and you're going to be losing a group of kids that ordinarily don't need a lot of additional material, but being provided that. It is one of the few programs, besides, I would certainly say, foreign languages, and as well as that, some of the arts programs that were offered, National History Day, you saw the great success that they had at that school this year. There's a group of students there that are met with those levels of enrichment. And I just caution that if that is going to be dispersed out to everyone, make sure that those students are not lost. My child is not going to be in that program anymore. He is moving on to the high school, looking forward to it. I'm just hopeful for the students behind him, for the parents behind him, that they don't miss out on that opportunity that he had. So, thank you. I see this is my time.
Thank you, Mr. Agati. And anyone else want to come up and speak from the audience? No? All right. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate everything you had to say. We will take it to heart and listen to it, discuss it as we're able to. And I'm sure, like I said, we'll come up with a solution that satisfies everybody. Thank you.
We hope, yes.
Okay. So next item is information reports. Any subcommittee reports this evening? Nothing from you? Nothing? Okay, that was easy. Roger, are you here? I see his picture. We
Can't hear you if you're speaking.
Oh, no, I don't have anything.
We see you. You have nothing? Okay, thank you. All right. The next item is learning, and Dr. Conti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, as we always do, just talk about the last day of school, but before doing so, I wanted to congratulate Mr. Foss on your last day of school as well, so congratulations.
Thank you.
And it was, like everyone here, it was a challenging school year, and as we say, a good first day, like a good last day, is when all the buses got home and all the students were sent home to the right houses. So I think that's what we accomplished. I do want to make sure that I thank everybody for a particularly difficult year. The last few months have felt more typical in terms of operations, scheduling, transportation, sort of management, and I think everyone has a quick protective memory in that they forget some of what we had gone through for the first 6 or 7 months of the school year, and just the constant changes to the landscape and the constant need to have people adjust, and that is from our support staff through our teachers to our principals. And again, I felt, and speaking with many people, felt this year was more challenging than last year. If you put on top of all of those changes, a real fatigue around managing the pandemic and some very strong opinions about best courses of action. So again, I think our nursing staff did a tremendous job. I think the central office support in regards to reporting. I know the weekends that people put in, and again, I want to make sure Mr. Larkin in particular, Barbara Conley as our nursing supervisor, and again, all of our teachers just did a tremendous job. Even though it felt like a more typical school year at the end, it certainly was not as manifested all the way through. So I didn't want to mark the last day of school this year without commenting that and appreciating all the work that people put in.
Thank you. The next item is elementary enrollment.
Again, fairly standard report for you all. So in your packets, you had the enrollment. This reflects a migration of some students from the Avalon apartments to Pine Glen, we were actually able to free up one classroom at Fox Hill. I think you had all been brought into, included in the conversation about the crowding at Fox Hill, so we were able to free up one classroom. We're hoping in subsequent years we'll be able to free up more classrooms. You can see, again, from the class sizes, I think we're very fortunate in Burlington to have the class sizes that we have. In many instances, people are so used to these class sizes that it is, I don't think they recognize them as being as positive as they are. My colleagues are often very envious of the class sizes that we have. So again, I just did some averages district-wide. So currently we have about 1,635 elementary students K to 5. That number will change and increase as the summer goes on, as kindergarten enrollment increases. But at 98 homeroom classes, that's around 17 students a class. And again, I know that's different, but they're really ranging from, we have some 14s to basically, I think they had one section of 20 in 5th grade, but our early elementary classes, I think the sizes are all right around 18 or fewer, and I think that's just, I think that's an important feature of the elementary schools in Burlington. So I just want to make sure I share that with you in terms of moving forward in staffing. We still have issues with crowding at Fox Hill. I think we're still going to need to look at an overall redistricting as part of the new Fox Hill project. But I think we're going to try to manage the distribution of students across classrooms as we see them. And again, please continue to notice the Fox Hill enrollment is creeping up towards the Francis Wyman enrollment, and in terms of support staff, specialist, assistant principal, really need to start thinking of that differently than sort of pairing Fox Hill with Memorial. So again, just in your heads, because we've always paired Fox Hill with Memorial, and we're starting to see that growth there at Fox Hill.
Thank you, Dr. Carmody. The next item on the list is equity.
Again, I think as a matter of practice, and wanted to make sure that we read the equity statement as part of our public agenda. So I wanted to do that again tonight. So the educational equity, this is the school committee statement, means that every child belongs and receives whatever support he, she may need to develop his, her, their full academic, emotional, and social potential to learn and thrive every day. This begins with kindness and valuing the humanity of every child or individual. So just wanted to make sure that we constantly remind ourselves of the equity statement and our goal to provide that for every student.
Thank you. Our next item is thriving.
Patrick, do you want to join in a little bit with the COVID commenting? So no district no district testing next year because the DESE is no longer supporting that. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. So if we'll have to strategize during the summer again if there's going to be a need for the district to support all families, some families. We don't know what we're going to face in the fall, so that'll be something we'll discuss some options over the summer and have more detail before the school year starts.
Again, we're hoping, we're planning, let's say, on a more typical start to the year. That's what we were planning last year, and so our hope is that that'll happen. Just as of right now, the state seems to be no longer supporting the distribution of tests. So families will be responsible for that. I think we'll be responding to students who come in or who present with symptoms like we would with any student that presents with symptoms. If they're feverish, if they, it's a parent's or a family's responsibility, for instance, get a strep test, that they would be responsible then for potentially getting a COVID test if that's part of what we're going to manage moving forward. And I think it's gonna be just more typical symptom management. And so I think that's, just wanted to say, we're sort of gonna be transitioning out of the testing and test distribution. And again, please understand that that took a lot of coordination and time, and our support. I know Rosemary did a lot with distributing the test every week, and just making sure that we had people signed up. There was a lot that went on behind the scenes with the COVID protocols, even as they weren't as prominent in our discussions. There was still a lot going on behind the scenes in terms of managing them. So I want to make sure I thank everyone for doing that.
Thank you for the update. And next is Facilities and Finance, Dr. Conti and Mr. Cuna.
Again, Bob, you have a lot going on with the Fox Hill, especially with the submission for the OPM bid, correct?
Correct.
So,
So we are working on OPM RFS, which is, OPM is Owner's Project Manager, and RFS is Request for Services. We have a deadline of July 14th where we need to submit that to MSBA. We believe we're at a good point right now where we need to get some legal opinion on that as it sits. And once we get that data back, then we will proceed to submit that to MSBA, and we'll share that with the Fox Hill School Building Committee as well too. So right now we're really just finalizing the OPM RFS.
And I think we were targeting by Friday to submit that for legal. Is that correct, or is it, we still on target for that?
Yes, we are targeting for this Friday or earlier to submit to legal.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I made a mistake, so I apologize. So may I go back a step in the agenda? Because
Sure.
again, under our Thriving, our COVID update, we talked about testing, but well, that's no longer going to be supported. We are looking to expand the support of our student mental health, and we invited Ms. Concession here to join us to talk more about Thriving in terms of the things that we are going to continue moving into next year and hopefully expand. Chrissy, I'm sorry, I'm just back and getting in the groove here again, so thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you. Thank you all for having me. I'm Christine Concession. I am the Director of Mental Health. I did put together a little PowerPoint that hopefully Mr. Kuna is going to be able to get up for us. Perfect, thank you. So the next slide. So I thought it was important to start with why mental health and social emotional learning is so important to be in the schools. So schools are just uniquely positioned to help students access mental health. We have direct and consistent contact with students. We have access to services on an ongoing basis. And we have a plethora of individuals within the schools that can help monitor how students are doing, both behaviorally, academically, and social emotionally. We all know students can simply not learn if their mental health is not being addressed. A prime example of this is how anxiety presents in all students. So anxiety and working memory are completely connected. So when your anxiety or stress levels are up, your working memory goes down. So your working memory is your short-term memory. So think of a student who is getting 3 steps of directions. If their anxiety is high, they're most likely only hearing step 1. So it's important for us to address that so we can have students accessing the curriculum. Students need to have the social emotional skills to be prepared for life after school. And I would say not just after high school, but for every instance, right? When we have our kids playing on sports teams, going to friends' houses, participating in school and out-of-school activities, we're asking them to utilize social emotional skills. Schools are the de facto mental health system for students at this point, followed by the juvenile justice system. And I also wanted to point out that our educational equity statement points to emotional and social potential. So I really think it's important for us to talk about why it's important in schools. But if we can go to the next slide. I also wanted to talk about the benefits of providing mental health in school. So with providing mental health services and teaching social emotional skills to students, we see an increase in academic performance, over 11% increase in standardized test scores. We see a decreased rate in crises in the hospitals. We see an increased rate in attendance, decrease in behavioral concerns, decreased rate in substance abuse or incarceration later in life, a decrease in healthcare cost, and an increase for productivity for all staff. And I think that's an interesting one. That was an unanticipated benefit of teaching social emotional learning skills and also helping with mental health, is that we are seeing that staff themselves are seeing the benefits from that and having a higher productivity. So, thank you. In bringing it all together, as you can imagine, mental health problems are pervasive across the country. They were pervasive across the country before COVID-19. Prior to COVID-19, between 13 and 22% of all school-aged youth experienced a mental health crisis. After COVID-19, we're seeing significant rises in anxiety, depression, feelings of loss and isolation, and particularly suicidal ideations among teenage girls. We have great community partnerships, and I'm going to talk about them in a couple of slides, but they're part of the solution, they're not the full solution. For those who haven't had to have to access mental health services lately, if you were to try to access mental health services in the community, you would be experiencing a pretty significant wait list right now. Students do not make academic progress, like we already talked about, if their mental health needs go unmet. So there's a lot of data and evidence that shows that as we address mental health needs and teach social emotional learning, so does academic performance increase. And we just are uniquely positioned in schools to help provide students access social emotional and mental health services. I wanted to talk a little bit about what Burlington Public Schools already does in regards to collecting data. So we do use the DESA, which is a social emotional screener for our K through 5 students and currently our 9 through 12 students. In K through 5, the screener is filled out by the teacher. In 9 through 12, it is a self-assessment by the students themselves. This past year, we did it twice, a pre-test and a post-test. This is our post-test results across the district. So as you can see, we have about 7% of our students in the need category, and about, I think it says 1,210 students in the typical, and 10% in our strength. Can we go to the next slide before I want to just point out something? This is how it plays out by grade level across the district. So as you can see, in our students who self-assessed, we have a higher level of need, which is our 9 through 12th graders, than in our K through 5th. I do want to point out that the DESA has a national standardized norm of a score of a 40 for identifying a student in need. We've dug into the data a little bit here in Burlington, and what I found is we actually service students with a score of 50 and below. So we're actually servicing more students than this necessarily shows in helping with social emotional skills and mental health needs. Thanks. Just to briefly, I know you already got a very wonderful presentation on the YRBS, and I didn't want to pull out all of the mental health data again, but I did pull out 2 slides that I thought were really important. These are the percentage of students who report having poor mental health over the past 30 days. And as you can see, it grows from 6th to 12th grade. We're pretty typical with the Middlesex League, but just another thing to keep in mind as we talk about mental health in schools. And this is, again, another YRBS slide that you already got some preview to, but the number of students who thought about attempting suicide and those that attempted suicide by grade. So I wanted to talk about what we have in regards to some other internal data. We keep track of what we call internal risk assessments. So the staff of Burlington Public Schools have been trained this past year on the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. It's an evidence-based scale to address students who have suicidal ideations. So as you can see, this is just a general overlook of what and who we evaluated. So for conducting the mental health assessments, the majority were done in the middle school and the high school, with some in the elementary school. To give you a sense of those numbers, we conducted 8 risk assessments in the elementary schools, 44 this year in Marshall Simons Middle School, and 36 in Burlington High School. The second pie graph shows of those risk assessments, which ones were screened in, meaning students received a higher level of care, whether that was a partial hospital program or they were hospitalized, and which ones were screened out. I just want to point out that this pie graph is forever going to be changing based on the climate of the mental health system outside of the school. We see this a lot. This year in particular, we saw a lot of students who were housed at the hospitals in the emergency rooms for several days, but because of not having open beds would then return to school. So this will shift as availability shifts, as the pendulum swings for what is the screened in and screened out. But I wanted to share the information that we have this year. And then I wanted to talk about what we're already doing. So in the elementary level, we've had responsive classroom and PBIS in place for a very long time. Our counselors in K through 5 push in and teach SEL lessons at classroom-based. So I gave a little example over there this year. All of the classrooms read a book called Outside Inside, which talked about the pandemic and how it impacted things inside of the house and things outside of the house. We also run groups at the elementary level, mostly focused on social skills and friendship. This year, for the first time, we actually embedded outside licensed counselors from Family Counseling Associates at 3 of our 4 elementary schools. So these counselors came into the elementary schools and provided one-on-one counseling to identified students. I can tell you that we received over 32 referrals in the elementary range just for the embedded counselor. She was able to service 15 of those students in the elementary grades. We also provide short and long-term counseling services by our counselors, our school adjustment, our social workers, our school psychologists, and of course we have the desk of social emotional assessment in the elementary school. And thinking about what we had going on at the Marshall Simons Middle School this year, we've had I believe it's the 2nd or 3rd year of their advisory program. I wanted to point out advisory because some of those advisory lessons do directly relate to social emotional learning skills. So the picture of the door that you're seeing over there was a gratitude lesson that Marshall Simons Middle School students participated in, and was a door decorating contest. We had, for the first time, the counselors at the middle school push in and do whole grade level or whole grade lessons per their grades, for their 7th, 8th, and 9th. So they went into the classrooms 3 times. They talked about problem solving, identity, and other factors. Next year, we're going to be expanding that to 4 times throughout the year. For the first time this year, we piloted a group curriculum through TRAILS, which is an evidence-based curriculum aimed at helping students who are experiencing stress, anxiety, or depression. We focused on the 7th grade this year. We had 12 participants run. It was a co-run group between our school social worker in the middle school and one of the guidance counselors. And I think it was extremely successful. We also have embedded counselors at the middle school level. Those counselors have been in place for a little bit. Those are through Leahy Behavioral Health, but next year we are expanding that and adding a counselor through Family Counseling Associates that will actually be there 3 full days to provide one-on-one counseling to students. We have a bridge program at the middle school which services some students who need more consistent daily check-ins for social and emotional needs. And just like the elementary school, we provide short and long-term counseling services from our school counselors, our school adjustment, our social workers, and our school psychs. And then what happened at the high school this year? So we had advisory for the first time this year. We also had all of our counselors incorporating SEL skills into their small groups. So when they were meeting with small groups of students, whether it was grade 9, 10, 11, or 12, they were trying to incorporate an SEL skill as an opener. We had, for the first time ever, Cbt Groups running this year. So those groups were focused on students, again, who were struggling with stress, anxiety, or depression. There were 4 sessions of groups run, 8 groups total. So groups were for 9th and 10th or 11th and 12th graders, and they were co-run by our school adjustment counselor, Ms. Rogers, and our school guidance counselors. We had embedded outside counselors as well at Burlington High School through Leahy Behavioral Health. We've continued to keep our bridge program in place, which is a robust program at the high school that services over 35 to 40 students on a throughout the year who need more intensive mental health or social emotional support. We have short and long-term counseling services. This year we also partnered with some outside agencies to bring in whole group presentations. The NAM project came in and did a youth-to-youth model in our health classes to talk about mental health and how it impacted them. And we had Minding Your Minds come in to do a similar presentation for a whole grade level. And again, this was the first official year of doing the DESA social emotional assessment at the high school. We were a pilot school last year, but all of our students completed the assessment twice. And the DESA in the high school, again, is a student-driven assessment. Just a little bit about the partnerships and collaborations that we have. So we have a wonderful and long-standing relationship with Burlington Youth and Family Services. They are a huge benefit to the town and have been a huge support for all levels, and I would say also for our staff. We have the benefit of all residents in Burlington having access to Interface, which is a referral system. So any resident, including students, families, caregivers, can call a 800 number and speak with a licensed mental health clinician and request services and get placed with someone who has an opening in a fairly short period of time. Currently, their wait list is about 2 to 3 weeks, which is very less than what you would probably find if you were trying to do it on your own. Family Counseling Associates was a new partnership this year. That was the partnership that helped push in the embedded counselors in the elementary level. They also provided all of our families with a direct referral line. So we sent that out, and if families were looking for counseling, they could fill out a direct referral line. We've had a long-standing relationship with Leahy Behavioral Health. They've had embedded counselors at our middle school and our high school level for several years. I'm excited to announce that we're starting a new partnership with William James College next year. We will be taking on some interns who are in their first or second year master's or doctorate programs, and specifically we're hoping to have interns who are bilingual. So that's exciting, and we are working through that partnership this summer. We've continued to have a partnership with McLean Hospital on their school consultation team. So their team comes and meets with our counselors in the middle school and high school on a monthly basis to provide ongoing training, support, and consultation. Next year, we are also going to be part of the Castle's SEL Fellows Program. We were accepted into the Fellows Program and will be working with Castle directly to implement and evaluate our SEL programming across the district. And I did want to make sure that I also talked about the Massachusetts School Mental Health Consortium, which is a consortium of, I'm not even sure what number of schools they're up to right now, but most schools in Massachusetts. This year they provided us with tremendous training opportunities and grant opportunities. Through them, we were able to get all of our staff in the high school and middle school trained in the TRAILS curriculum for the groups. We were able to get some staff trained in compassion care coping skills, and next year they are offering us training on trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy for all of our counselors. So thinking about next year, I just wanted to talk about where things are heading. We are looking at doing some more universal social, emotional, mental health screening. So the DESA will be expanding into the 6th grade as our social emotional screener. And we'll be doing some small pilots on some universal mental health screeners district-wide, K through 12. We are working this summer, the counselors are working both at the middle school and elementary levels to work on a consistent and equitable social emotional learning curriculum so that students at every single school receive the same lessons and the same scope and sequence, and that we can do a lot more communication with families about what those lessons will be and what the major themes will be. We are working on protocols, so we are spending this summer developing consistent protocols. Those protocols are focused on numerous things, such as our suicide ideation protocol, our postvention protocol if there were to be a suicide, our threat assessment protocol, our non-self-injury protocol. So we have all of those working this summer. There's a large group of us working together, and we're hoping to present those to you next fall. We are working again on our universal SEL skill teaching. So all of our counselors are working on getting their lessons put together so that they can be ready to go in the fall. And working on our group curriculums as well. We are working next year again on ongoing professional development for all staff. We did receive a grant through the Leahy Medical Center this year. This is the second year that we received this grant. Part of that grant is going into having staff trained as mental health first aiders. So the goal is going to be have all staff in the Marshall Simons Middle School and Burlington High School trained within the next 3 years as mental health first aiders. It's specifically geared towards that population. That's why they are picked. I think it's a really nice partnership. Our Burlington police officers and Burlington fire staff are all received certification as mental health first aiders, so all of our teachers will as well. Hopefully we'll have some consistent communication and language across the town. We started a Educator Wellness Forum this year, so we ran 2 Educator Wellness groups. Myself and another staff member were trained in a curriculum. We thought it was really important to be supporting our teachers. As we just support our students, we need to support our staff as well. So we did offer 2 of those and plan to offer 5 more throughout the school year next year. And we are starting a school mental health advisory council. So next year I will be working with a team of parents and guardians who also work within the mental health field themselves. And we will be working together to talk about everything that really is on this presentation and moving forward with protocols, where we are in our SEL development, how things are going with the Castles Fellows program, and whatnot. And I just wanted to end with some gratitude. So thank you to the school committee for your ongoing support in helping with mental health and SEL. I can't tell you how much I've appreciated your willingness to allow us to participate in new initiatives, to hire new staff. I think it's been wonderful. This year is my first year working with the central office staff, so I just wanted to say that they've been nothing but supportive and helpful. Going into all of the buildings this year and getting to work with every single principal and district leader, I have felt welcomed, I have felt embraced, I have felt like they have given me an opportunity to go in and work with the staff. They've been very open-minded about changing new things or things that have been in place for a very long time. And of course, none of this work could be done without the people on the ground. So I can't say enough about the wonderful school counselors that we've hired, our school adjustment and social workers in our school sites. They really have done a tremendous job this year, and nothing of this would be done without them. So that's all I have. Anyone has any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Confucian. I really appreciated the presentation. I feel that this is a really important subject, not only to support the students and the staff, and I appreciated you letting us know some of the past history and also letting us know where things are headed, so I'm really excited about that. Does anyone else have any comments? Mr. Foss?
I'd like to echo what Ms. Bond said, and thank you for the very thorough presentation. It's such an important part of what we do in Burlington, and my request is, if possible, could you share those slides with us?
Yes, of course.
I'd like to take a closer look. Thank you.
Ms. Simon?
I'm trying not to repeat what other people said. I'm glad to have this presentation. I personally knew there was a lot going on in the district, clearly given the events of the last couple of weeks, and there's so much need. And we may not have all of our ducks in a row yet, but the things you're planning on, like getting the consistent protocols, seem like a really crucial piece that you've already been planning, and unfortunately it wasn't in place maybe when it needed to be. And I also would appreciate having this, and I would like to ask Dr. Conti if this presentation or some summary of it maybe should go up on the website, because I've also heard comments from parents of why aren't we doing screenings and why aren't we doing social emotional learning for all students, and I knew we were, but not everyone in the community knew that. So if we put this seems pretty comprehensive report of what we are doing, I think it may help people to understand what we're doing, and then we can find where do we need additional whatevers. And you certainly have a long list of next steps, so I really appreciate you thinking forward and thinking about how to improve what we've already got. And also want to thank all the people who are doing the work as you did, as you just thanked them.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Anyone else? Ms. Monaco?
I just want to say thank you for a very well-done presentation. You certainly enlightened us on a lot of activity that we didn't even know was happening in some cases, so thank you.
Dr. Conti?
Thank you, Prissy, thank you very much. I just have one question, just honestly, because I don't know. With the interns from William James, is that similar to a teaching program where they would be supervised by folks back at William James? So it's a program that they have, or how does that work, I guess?
Excuse me, Dr. Conti, could you speak a little closer to your mic? I heard people can't hear you too well.
I can. So again, I know how teacher training programs work. I'm not sure about this, so I made an assumption that graduate students from William James would be coming here and they would be supervised by...
Me.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little different when it comes to the counseling realm because the supervisor has to hold a certain outside license. So I will be doing the supervision for the interns. Next year, my hope is as we have numerous staff across the district who are working on getting both their school licenses, but their outside licenses, whether that's their LMHCs or their LCSWs, we'll be able to expand that program. So, but next year, it'll be me.
Okay, and I think a question the school committee always asks is how can they help? And I think in thinking of this not as something extra, but as a core part of learning, and again, we are going to be talking lots about thriving and moving forward as part of our district objectives. I'm assuming the social workers they're no longer nice to haves, they're necessary to haves. Is that what I'm hearing?
You know, I'm a social worker by trade, so I guess that I would say as we're moving towards wanting to provide more mental health services in school, we need to think about having that person in a tier 2 level who has an outside license as well. It's wonderful to have these partnerships with community providers. I cherish them. I think they have done a wonderful job. But as I mentioned, we had 32 referrals, and we can only service 15 of those students. So even in our elementary levels, we already have a demonstrated need. So as we move forward, I would love to see either school adjustment or school social workers at every school.
So again, something to put in your head, and again, not as a nice to have, but as a necessary to have, and making sure students are connected and developing social emotional skills also connects to, as Mrs. Concession said, to all other academic learning, and also to school climate, to safety, everything else that we discuss really is embedded in these skills. So I just don't think we've talked about them a whole lot, and maybe one benefit from COVID, if there are any, is that these student needs were brought to the forefront of us having to do this. So thank you very much. Again, I think a part of the objective of having someone oversee this is we had lots of efforts happening sort of all over the district, but sort of bringing them all together, articulating them is going to allow us to do, again, more standardized protocols, as someone already mentioned, and just better planning, moving forward. So thank you for taking that on.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll go back on track again. And the next item would be the BHS update. Mr. Cuna?
Thank you. I don't have any specific news to update you all on Burlington High School. What I would like to do is take a minute to give a thank you to the custodial and cafeteria staff, also the cafeteria staff for all the work that they've done this year. And I'd like to give a pre-thank you to those staffs for the amount of work that gets done over the summer. I know we kind of forget about the summertime, but a lot of work does take place, and our crews will be in here. And so I just want to pre-thank them as well. But again, no specific update on the high school tonight.
Thank you. next item is the VSAA MOA 22-23 vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Get to it. The VSAA is the Burlington Schools Administrator Association. I believe there are 7 or 8 members. That is the 12-month employee group that includes the athletic director, the associate principals at the high school, the director of counseling, director of the preschool, and I think that's about it. So this is that employee group, and we had an unsettled contract. So this again is recommended. School committee vote to approve the memorandum of agreement with the BSAA, the Burlington Administrative Association, for this fiscal year, which is fiscal 22 at 2%, and for next fiscal year, fiscal 23, for a 3% cost of living increase to their contract.
So moved. Second. And any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
I guess I just wanted to mention for people who aren't aware, that is the same in percentage of COLA that we have tentatively agreed to with the TBEA.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'm in favor, so it's 4-0-0. Okay, any new business to discuss?
Just what you've got right there, that's new.
So, I understand this is Dr. Conti's favorite time of year. So this is where we do, school committee does his evaluation. And I just wanted to let everybody know that the evaluations are sent out individually to all of the school committee members. Ms. Basardo does not participate in the evaluation since she's newly voted in. So it was 4 people who are present this evening. And what I'll do is just go through and let you know how he was evaluated. So there's step 1, which is the access progress towards goals. And there's professional practice goals, student learning goals, and student improvement goals. And on the professional practice goals, he had 2 meets and 2 exceeds. The student learning goals, he had 2 met and 2 exceed. And under the district improvement goal, he had 4 met. The next item that we all had to address was step 2, which is assess performance on standards, reference performance ratings per standard, and we all had to check a box, and the ratings were unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, and exemplary. So under standard 1, instructional leadership, he had 2 proficient and 2 exemplary. Under standard 2, management and operations, 2 proficient and 2 exemplary. Under standard 3, family and community engagement, 4 proficient. And under standard 4, professional culture, 2 proficient and 2 exemplary. So the rate overall would be 2 proficient and 2 rated him as exemplary. So what I wanted to do is just go through and mention the rate overall and summarize the performance. And I'll just add comments that, it's a accumulation of comments that everyone made, and I'll just pull some out and talk about them. But this is a cumulative report which includes all the ratings from 4 of the 5 school committee members, along with select written comments offered by the school committee members. Again, Dr. Conti received 2 proficient ratings and 2 exemplary ratings. It is evident from the ratings and the comments that are participating school committee members that we were very pleased with Dr. Conti's performance overall this past year. Every rating by every member in the categories were either proficient or exemplary. The majority of the ratings for every goal was either met or exceeded. The written comments reflected the ratings. So this year, similarly to last year, was especially challenging for the superintendent and his administration. The school committee clearly feels that the superintendent met the ever-changing challenges. So I pulled out some comments from various people in their evaluation. Dr. Conti has worked to meet his district improvement, student learning, and professional practice goals for 2021-2022 school year. In an ever-changing environment and with the stakeholders advocating for widely different choices, Dr. Conti walked a line that kept students and staff safe and continued the learning of students. Next comment. As an educational leader, he is strong, but again, in an effort to maintain high morale, he takes things slowly. I wish our administrators took such a careful approach. The success of our students continues to amaze me as I watch where they go onto school and what awesome citizens they become. I have great pride in the students who have gone through our schools. Dr. Conti should get tremendous credit for that. The next comment was COVID heightened and extended tensions and conflict regarding our 2 MOAs for working conditions during COVID and the open contract negotiations with the BEA. Dr. Conti demonstrated a high level of creativity, perseverance, and flexibility in resolving many difficult issues. Next comment. Dr. Conti continued to impress me with the time and effort he puts into his role. He continued to adjust to the ever-changing COVID situation and stayed on top of best practices using all resources, internal and external, allowing everyone to have as safe of a learning environment as possible. He is respected by his peers as a leader, which to me says a lot about how lucky we are to have him as a superintendent in our schools. Should I go through the rest of these?
No.
I think we're good. Dr. Conti, you have any comments?
And Madam Chair, thank you very much. As you all know, any superintendent performance reflects the work of others. So I want to make sure I thank all the support staff, all the educators, especially the central office staff, the nurses, for all that they do every day. Again, it's these talented people that are result in the performance that you mentioned today. Please know that I know that. I want to thank the committee for your constant support. I think the last years, again, have been challenging. The superintendency is changing, and I think that we need to continue to make adjustments and working together as we move forward. Things are challenging, as you all know, and I do think, though, the community support in Burlington for their schools, for their children is outstanding. And if you do what I do for a living, Burlington is just an exceptional place to do it. So I don't take that for granted, and it is, I'm very appreciative and humbled to serve in this capacity for this community. So thank you, and again, thank you to the team that makes all this happen.
Thank you, Dr. Conti. Anyone else want any comments, or we're good? Did you want to say something, Ms. Simon?
I think we said it, and thank you.
We're all good, all right. So we can move on to item B, which is school committee support minutes.
School committee, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, school committee support and minutes are the taking of minutes for school committee meetings. And so, as we mentioned last meeting, and I'm so happy that she is here in person, Ms. Kristen Downey has served as the school committee support and minutes taker for this year. We wanted to have a discussion because it's really been too much for her to have a full-time job and a full-time job in the evenings. So again, Kristen, thank you so much for everything. I know many of you have individually come to me and said, again, Kristen's done an amazing job. We'd like a little bit more support during the day. Some of the policy work that needs to get done, again, may require more support. We just can't structure the job as it's currently structured. So what I really wanted to talk to the committee about is what sort of support that you would like. It's really a confidential support position for the committee. conversation since you know the requirements, and I just want to make sure we post what the committee believes they need moving forward. So that's the topic and the point of this conversation. We also have one official building committee that's already functioning again. Ms. Downey also serves as the recording secretary for the Fox Hill Building Committee, which is another evening, and that's going to be picking up steam. And then we're going to be forming a more official high school building committee, which is also going to require minute taking. So again, I just think we should talk about that, and maybe we can separate out that minute taking from school committee, or we can figure out how to put this all together. But so I'd like to maybe have that conversation.
Ms. Simon, you have a comment?
I'd be willing to start the conversation. I think you gave us a draft of a possible posting, which was really helpful. I think it does include most of the things that we need. Under essential duties and responsibilities, it does say other duties as assigned, but I guess especially because we are going to be reviewing all of our policies, and I want to thank our community member who raised that tonight. We have a lot of work to do to clean up our policies and make sure that they're accurate and posted and all that. I would like it to specify support for the ongoing policy work as an additional perhaps sentence in addition to other duties as assigned. That's my main comment, and the other is regarding what Dr. Conti just mentioned, that I would be comfortable with posting 2 positions that somebody could be both of, to be the school committee secretary and recording secretary, minute taker. And if, I'm not sure, because if someone thinks of a reason not to, but I think that a separate person could be the building committee recording secretary, and possibly 2 different people for the 2 different building committees. So if somebody wanted all 3 of those, but that will in the long term involve a lot of evening meetings. So I would suggest that we perhaps separate the 3, or at least the 2 categories, and post them as separate or together. Those are my 2 suggestions.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Any other comments? Ms. Monaco?
I would like some mention in the posting that, like when Sharon was here, Sharon had a desk in your office, and I think that in order to do the work that's necessary, it involves a lot of school committee paperwork and looking for policies and updating policies and all of that. I think that person needs to functionally be in the building for, so many hours, I don't know how many. I would probably leave the whole thing as one posting unless we find someone that just doesn't want that much of it, and then maybe you could find a second person to do building committee meetings separately if necessary. But in general, what we want is Sharon, who was here in the building during the day. Kristen, you've done an awesome job on all of these minutes and things. I think we all feel like we're imposing somewhat on Terry when we need something and we have to call her or email her. And it would just be nice to have someone that we know is there for us.
Again, Terry would never say you're imposing. I think what she would say is, need her help so much that she just honestly doesn't have time for you all. So it's my fault. So I get that. And again, please I'll be open to any other discussion. But Kristen, the minutes take a significant amount of time, and so.
I was going to comment too on, if you want to first comment on the timing.
We'll talk. I just want to talk about the length of job. So please talk first, and then we'll comment first.
No, I was going to say I agree that we need someone like Sharon too, because just from my perspective, it was really difficult. It's difficult for me you know, I am in an office every day, and when I don't get the minutes, or maybe I don't get the agenda until Friday, late, it doesn't give me a lot of prep time to really read through everything, so I've talked to a few people from past, I mean, Sharon was giving those agendas out on a Wednesday, 2 days, you know, Wednesday or Thursday earlier, and so it gives more time to go through and notice if there's a mistake, or you're getting all of the attachments in enough time to really go through and read through it with the detail that, you know, I'd like to, so, that's just my comment.
Does Kristen want to comment?
Kristen?
I will say that it is a significant amount of time that I didn't anticipate. Originally when I accepted or started the job a year ago, which is why I needed to step down from it, because it was a lot more time than expected.
How much time would you say you're spending? Because I mean, I think that might be important to share with people when they're interviewing for the position. The extra, like what you anticipated versus what you really ended up doing.
Just for minute purposes, a typical meeting would be, 10 to 15 hours worth of putting it in a form that's acceptable and posted on the town website. So I do anywhere from 10 to 15 hours depending on the meeting. A couple of them have been close to 17 hours. It really depends on the length. Like some of those 3-hour meetings do get lengthy. But the school building committee ones are shorter. And, it's typically one topic, shorter amount of minutes. Those are more manageable for someone. That's why I think, depending on how the school building goes, how much time those typically take me 1 to 2 hours, depending on what's spoken about now, but it's gonna get either less or more busy depending on the topics going forward.
So again, our initial conversation, Kristen was also including Terry in this conversation because she does a lot of the packet work, is to maybe post a part-time, like a 50% office type position because of the evenings that would be required, and maybe look at it that way, so it's sort of a split, part-time during the day, and then with the evenings that are required at night. And again, this is would be a confidential position, so it would not be included in the clerical union. It would be somewhat flexible, and we could work out sort of a schedule that you all would know. Maybe it's front-loaded to get the packets out again as early as possible, and maybe if that work is done, then instead of coming to the office on Friday because they'll be up 2 nights or something like that, we would just need to work that out. So I just wanted to again ask, as we do the posting, there will be what's been missing since Sharon is a office support during the day. So we'll include an office support during the day for the school committee, and then an evening support. And again, if we need to split off a building committee, we can certainly split off a building committee for minutes. I don't think that's a problem, but we should at least go into this with, I think about a 50% office presence, and then nights, given that it's taking sometimes 15 hours or more for minutes. Does that sound acceptable to the committee? Yes, thumbs up? Good.
I do have one other thought, which I didn't mention earlier, and I thought of this earlier, but I forgot. Sharon also knew a lot about school committees and school committee regulations and school committee meeting regulations. So although I don't think we can find somebody who has that experience, I would like to include, unless you think there's a reason not to, but include in the posting, like near the end, familiarity with Mass Public Records Law and open meeting laws, a plus, and maybe something like willingness to learn school committee regulations and requirements or whatever. There is an organization that Sharon used to sometimes attend trainings called CUSCAP. Does anybody, the MASC conference always has some workshop for them. So it could be, you know, that could be a plus for someone applying, someone who had that training. But I don't think we can require it, because I don't think we'd find that, but to at least
It's a like to have.
a like to have and a willingness to include the training, some training on those issues, because it was, we would turn to Sharon and say, do we need a vote on this? And, you know, and it was, there's some, you know, institutional knowledge here and history, but Sharon often knew the answer, so that would be really helpful. I'd like to include that as well.
Right, and again, just, we reached out to a bunch of different districts, and we thought there would be more standardization, but actually, every district sort of has their own practice and history with this type of position, so there was really no model for us to look at. We even contacted the Massachusetts Association of School Committees and said, do you have a standard posting? And they said, no, we don't. So again, I think that's why I just wanted to have the conversation tonight. I feel like I have enough direction to move forward. We had a bit of a break. The summer meetings, again, we'll pick up, but we look to have this position sort of up and ready for the fall.
Ms. Monica?
Sharon didn't know any of that stuff until she took the position, because she transferred in from a different position within the school department, and she learned it, you know, she self-taught, and she went through a lot of years helping us out. I wonder if she'd like to mentor someone.
Again, we can certainly talk about that. Let's see who applies and how this all comes together. So I think that would be something we can discuss.
But you know, the right person is going to be willing to learn, you know, what she had.
Yeah, and I think the willingness to learn is the issue.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. So next is old business and the cybersecurity policy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was presented to you initially in executive session. I think the school committee had a first reading last time. Bob, you were on the ISAC committee that has requested that the school district adopt this policy, and I'm just looking at you. The selectmen have adopted this policy as well?
Yes.
So again, my recommendation, try to follow with the minutes, is school committee approved the cybersecurity policy that you conducted a first reading on last time, and that we discussed for several months.
I'd like to move that we approve the cybersecurity policy as presented to us.
Any discussion, any additional discussion?
I'm in favor of this, and I just want to say, I know there's a lot of people who know a lot about the topic, who put this together and spend a lot of time doing it, and I really appreciate that, because I wouldn't know what to write for a policy, and so I'm very much in favor of supporting this.
And it's extremely important this day and age to have a policy in place, so I'm going to go ahead and say all in favor?
Aye.
I'm in favor, and so no one's opposed, so it's 4-0-0.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The second piece of old business, again, is another second reading. It is the wellness policy that we had a lot of discussion about, I think over 2 years ago, prior to COVID. I think the wellness committee, which is required by state regulation, will be meeting again next fall, and this was the wellness policy that was discussed again several years ago. That was to come before the committee in the spring of 20. The reason that it's coming before you now is connected to the wellness policy is the Safe Routes to School program, and they require you to choose from one of three statements. One of three?
Yes, you only need to choose one of the three, or you can create your own. The three that are provided are examples, but can be used.
Again, I didn't see a need to create our own, since these are coming directly from the Safe Routes to School. I don't have a strong recommendation, but to me, for policy, shorter is always better. Number 3 would be, I would be fine with that recommendation. Again, if the committee would like to choose something else, I don't have strong feelings. But the phrase that from the Safe Routes to School program reads as follows: the Burlington Public School District will strive to support safe walking and biking to and from school, and to decrease parent congestion and idling through the Massachusetts Department of Transportation's Safe Routes to School program, elements of education, encouragement, engagement, engineering, and evaluation. So that would be the phrase that I would like to add to our wellness policy. So this would be, again, almost a 2-part vote. One on the Safe Routes to School phrase that you would like. My suggestion is to do that first, and then the second vote then would be to adopt the wellness policy with that phrase being included.
You want to vote it on tonight?
I think this was meant to be a second reading of the
Okay.
wellness policy, so yes.
I move that we adopt number 3, the Burlington Public School District, et cetera, what Eric just read.
I'd like to propose another alternative
Okay,
for
let's,
discussion. So
Okay.
is now a good time?
go ahead.
So, I would like to suggest, I agree with Dr. Conti that the length of the first one was longer, the second one was a little, was shorter, and the third one was shorter. I'm leaning toward the second one, and I liked the kinds of things that were expressed in the number 1, but I did feel it was a little too, I don't know if we're there yet, so I didn't want to promise things that we can't do. And I also really liked the encouraging the neighborhood walking, biking event participation, but I don't feel we can kind of say we're gonna do that, because it involves a huge amount of organizing, and I mean, I think it was fabulous what was done this spring. I think it was at Fox Hill, and a lot of parents got involved, and I'd like to encourage that. So I would like to suggest that we approve the number 2, which reads the Burlington, with this one phrase added. The Burlington Public School District supports walking, bicycling, and other forms of active transportation to and from school, and encourages efforts to minimize driving and idling when possible. The district will provide all students and teachers with pedestrian and bicycle safety education on active transportation skills. Now my addition: encourage neighborhood walking, biking, event participation, and then back to the template, and other program elements of the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Safe Routes to School program. So it's a little longer than the number 3. I like it a little better. I'm willing to be convinced otherwise, but I wanted to put that out.
Ms. Monaco, you had a comment?
Yeah, the reason that I would be more inclined to go with the third one is because if you put in the policy that the district will provide all students, et cetera, then you're giving yourself a mandate, and, you know, every single year you're gonna have to find a time and a place to do all of this, and it's a burden that, you can do all that, but do you want to have a policy that says you have to do it each and every year, when, you know, there might be a time when there's a problem, and yet you'll be violating your own policy if you don't. So that's why, I mean, I think we should do it, but I don't think it should be in the policy.
Mr. Fox, you have a comment?
I was leaning toward number 1, and now I'm convinced that simpler is better, but I guess my question, and Mr. Kiernan, maybe you can answer this, when it says the district will provide students and teachers education, is that something that Safe Routes from School program provides for us, or at least supports the district in providing?
The answer is the second part. They can provide support for it, but there's some curriculum that we would have to adopt and then also expand on from Safe Routes to School.
Okay.
Did you wanna say?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment too, and again, I like 3 as well because it is a little more vague, and it also will allow us to be more flexible. So we can certainly, provide this, type of information as part of what we do anyway. But by leaving it a little more open with a more general statement, like number 3, I think we give ourselves more flexibility to put a program together that matches what the capabilities, the staffing, whatever we want to dedicate towards it without overcommitting.
So I'm re-looking at number 3, and at the end it does say that using the Safe Routes to School elements of education, encouragement, engagement, engineering, and evaluation. And the encouragement and engagement is certainly the wording that I was a little more explicit about neighborhood events, but I do think it does cover it. I would be willing to support number 3 if we could. I just like the wording better from the other 2 to replace decrease parent congestion and substitute minimize driving. So it would say to minimize driving and idling through the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Safe Routes to School program. Would people be comfortable with that wording in number 3?
It already has
No,
decreased parent congestion.
It does.
And idling.
Yep.
And I'd like to substitute minimize driving and take out decrease parent congestion. I like the wording a little better. Anybody interested in that?
So again, Madam Chair, to Ms. Simon's point, let me just read it as proposed. And again, it's a change that I think I certainly support, doesn't change the meaning. The Burlington Public School District will strive to support safe walking and biking to and from school and to minimize driving and idling through the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Safe Routes to School program, elements of education, encouragement, engagement, engineering, and evaluation.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? Oh, Mr. Foss.
Mr. Cuna, just to clarify or to confirm that this language will cover us in the process as we're going through for the Safe Routes to School and the support that they give to us.
It will cover us in the prerequisite that we are required to adopt a policy into our wellness policy.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, so no more discussion? All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
I'm in favor. I'm gonna say all opposed. There's none. 4-0-0. Now,
So-
oops, go ahead. So now we have to make a motion to adopt the wellness policy.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm in favor. All opposed? 4-0-0.
Madam Chair. I also want to thank again Matt Jackling and the Wellness Committee because I know they spent a lot of time putting this policy together. Some of it is mandated by the state, but there was a lot of work put into it, so thank you to all those people.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. So we'll go ahead and I think next is a need for executive session. So we do have a need to go into executive session under the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, subsection 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the school district, and the chair so declares. We are discussing union contracts and the approval of executive minutes. The school committee will only return to public session for the purpose of adjournment.
Madam Chair, that's actually, we have to return to open session to take a vote on the contracts. We will
Oh,
be
yes,
discussing.
I'm sorry, correct. Okay, so we will come back to take a vote on the contract, and then we will adjourn after that. So we are going to go into executive
I
session.
move that we enter executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
No, it's gotta
Roll
go.
call.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're gonna take a roll call. I keep forgetting that. Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Foss?
Aye.
Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
I'm an aye. And we are going to go into executive session.